In that moment when she snatched the plate from my hands and dumped it all into the trash, sending the food I had prepared with so much love tumbling among the trash, I felt something shatter inside me. It wasn't just the dishes banging against the bottom of the trash can. It was my dignity being trampled, my hope being crushed, my soul being ripped to shreds. Jennifer turned to me with that smile I will remember until the end of my days. Her blue eyes, normally so beautiful, were as icy as Arctic ice. She leaned so close that I could smell her expensive perfume invading my nostrils, and whispered in a low, venomous voice, each word dripping with contempt, "Eat like a dog." Those four simple words carried so much hatred, so much calculated cruelty, that my entire body froze. I stood there in the middle of that kitchen I had helped remodel, myself spending $15,000 of my hard-earned savings, unable to move, to speak, to react. It was Christmas Day, the day that should have been one of family togetherness, love, and celebration. And there I was being humiliated in the most degrading way possible by the woman my son had chosen to love. What happened in the hours following that devastating moment completely changed the course of my life and revealed such shocking truths about manipulation, envy, and emotional illness that even today when I recall it, I feel a chill run down my spine. Because what I discovered about Jennifer the next morning, the confessions I heard, the secrets that came to light, were far beyond anything anyone could have imagined. If you're listening now, you probably know that not all family relationships are like those perfect stories we see on social media, right? We all have our conflicts, our challenges, our difficult moments. Here on this channel, you'll find a safe and welcoming space where real stories like mine are shared with complete honesty, without filters or judgment. These are accounts of ordinary people who have gone through extraordinary situations, stories that will deeply move you, make you reflect on your own experiences, and perhaps even help you see your family relationships from a different perspective. This is a place where every story matters, where you can feel truly understood and welcomed, because we all face battles that no one sees. Don't we? Subscribe to the channel now and join this incredible community that supports each other, understands each other without judgment, and grows together through shared experiences. Together we transform pain into wisdom, difficult experiences into valuable life lessons, and moments of despair into opportunities for growth. Now join me as I tell you from the beginning how this whole situation began and how I reached that devastating moment in the kitchen that would change everything forever. My name is Margaret, and I'm 63 years old, 63 years filled with experiences, joys, sorrows, and learning. I've spent most of my life being an incredibly devoted mother, a loving and present wife, and a committed professional. I grew up in a traditional middle-class family in Portland, Oregon, the daughter of an accountant and a nurse. My parents instilled in me values such as honesty, hard work, compassion, and above all, the importance of family from a young age. I remember my childhood fondly, the sunny afternoons playing in our backyard, the family dinners where everyone gathered around the table to share the day's experiences, the simple but memorable trips we took every summer to the Oregon coast. I grew up believing that family was the foundation of everything, the safe haven we could always return to. I met my husband Robert when I was just 22 years old. I was a senior in the Arts and Humanities program at Portland State University, and he was already working as a junior civil engineer at a local firm. We met at a charity event organized by the university. I vividly remember the moment our eyes first met. Robert had a gentle smile and brown eyes that exuded kindness and honesty. We talked all night long about everything and nothing, discovering that we had similar values, shared dreams, and complementary worldviews. 6 months after that first meeting, he proposed to me during a picnic in Forest Park. It was a simple proposal without much fuss, but filled with sincerity and love. I married Robert 3 months later in an intimate ceremony attended only by close family and dear friends. I wore my grandmother's wedding dress, a delicate piece of lace and satin that carried my family's history. The first years of our marriage were spent building a relationship. Robert worked long hours to advance his career, and I began teaching English at a local high school. We lived in a small but cozy apartment where every piece of furniture was carefully chosen, every decorative detail had a story. We were happy in a simple and genuine way. We didn't have much money, but we had each other, and that was enough. We spent our evenings talking about our plans for the future, about the family we wanted to build, about the places we dreamed of visiting. Robert was the kind of man who made me feel secure, loved, and valued. He never forgot important dates, always came home with a random flower he'd picked along the way, always asked me how my day was, and truly listened to my answer with genuine attention. 3 years after our wedding, we finally saved enough money for a down payment on our own home. It was a modest house in a quiet Portland neighborhood with 3 bedrooms, a small front yard, and a backyard. I remember the excitement I felt the day we received the keys. Robert picked me up in the entryway and carried me across the threshold, repeating the ritual we'd performed on our wedding day. That house became our sanctuary, the place where we would build our most precious memories. We spent months renovating every room, painting walls, replacing flooring, planting flowers in the garden. Every weekend was dedicated to improving this space that was ours, truly ours. A year after we moved into the house, I discovered I was pregnant. The news came one April morning when I took the test and saw those 2 pink lines appear. I cried with happiness. Robert cried with me. We were fulfilling our dream of becoming parents. The pregnancy was smooth without complications. Robert became even more attentive if possible. He attended every doctor's appointment, read books on parenting, and prepared the baby's room with meticulous care. We chose the name together Michael in honor of Robert's grandfather who had passed away years before. Michael was born in January on a cold, snowy morning. It was a long and difficult labor, but the moment I held that little baby in my arms, all the suffering disappeared. I looked at that perfect little face, those closed eyes, those tiny hands, and felt a love so intense it hurt. In that moment, I understood what my own mother always said, that a mother's love is unlike any other love in the world. Michael grew up a sweet and calm child. He was a little workhorse, slept well, ate well, and was healthy. I had taken time off from school to care for him during the first few months, and that period was one of the most special of my life. Those days were dedicated entirely to that little being who depended completely on me. I breastfed him, changed his diapers, sang lullabies, and told him stories, even though I knew he didn't yet understand words. Robert would come home from work and run to pick him up, tickle him, and elicit that sweet baby giggle. We were a complete and happy family. I went back to work when Michael was 6 months old, but I always made a point of being present in his life. I never missed a school presentation, never skipped a parent-teacher meeting, never failed to help with his homework. Michael grew up knowing he was loved unconditionally, that his parents were always there for him. We raised him with solid values, teaching the importance of honesty, respect, and compassion. He was never spoiled or rude. He had his stubborn moments, as every child does, but overall he was a polite and loving boy. During his teenage years, Michael went through a typical rebellious phase. There were moments of conflict, arguments about schedules, friendships, and responsibilities. But even during these difficult times, we always kept the lines of communication open. Robert had a special ability to talk to his son, making him understand the consequences of his actions without being overbearing. I complimented the more emotional side, offering support and understanding. Together, we formed a solid parenting team. Michael graduated from high school with good grades and earned admission to the University of Oregon to study business administration. It was hard to see him leave home, but we knew it was part of life's natural process. He visited us on weekends, called often, and stayed in touch. Throughout his 4 years of college, we remained close. Robert and I would go to college basketball games just to see Michael in the stands cheering with his friends. We brought groceries, home-cooked meals, anything that would make college more comfortable for him. After graduating, Michael landed a great job at a tech company in Seattle. It meant moving to another city 3 hours away from us. It was a bittersweet goodbye. We were proud of his achievement, but we missed our son's constant presence. Even so, he continued to visit us regularly. He spent at least one weekend with us every month. He called 2 or 3 times a week to chat. We never felt abandoned or forgotten. It was around this time, when Michael was 32 and well established in his career, that Robert began experiencing health problems. Minor ones at first: excessive fatigue, shortness of breath when climbing stairs, chest pains he insisted were just heartburn. I begged him to see a doctor, but Robert was stubborn, one of those old school men who thinks going to the doctor is a sign of weakness. Then one Saturday morning, he woke up with severe pain in his chest and left arm. I rushed him to the hospital. The doctors ran tests and discovered he had a serious blockage in his coronary arteries. He would need urgent bypass surgery. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Michael dropped everything in Seattle and came to be with us. Those were days of intense tension and anxiety. The surgery lasted over 6 hours. Michael and I stayed in the waiting room the entire time, holding each other's hands, praying, trying to stay positive. When the surgeon finally came out and said everything had gone well, that Robert was stable in his recovery, we burst into tears of relief. Robert spent a week in the hospital and then another 3 months recovering at home. I took time off from school to care for him full time. Michael came every weekend to help. They were difficult months, but also months that brought us even closer as a family. We weathered that storm together. Robert recovered well and returned to work, but at a slower pace. The doctors had warned us to reduce stress, engage in light exercise, and watch our diet. We followed all their recommendations to the letter. The following years were good. Robert was well, I was well, Michael was thriving in his career. We felt the worst was behind us. Then came that horrible day that divided my life into before and after. It was an autumn afternoon, lightly raining. Robert had gone for a walk in the park, part of the cardiologist's recommended exercise routine. He always went alone, saying that this time was good for organizing his thoughts. I was at home preparing dinner when the phone rang. It was a paramedic saying that Robert had suffered a sudden heart attack during the walk. Someone found him lying on the ground and called an ambulance, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. My Robert, my life partner, my best friend, was gone. Just like that, suddenly, without warning, without a chance to say goodbye. What followed was a blur of grief and proceedings. Michael arrived immediately. We arranged the funeral. Hundreds of people showed up to pay their respects. People Robert had touched throughout his life. Coworkers, neighbors, friends from decades ago. Everyone spoke of what a good, honest, hard-working man he was. That comforted me a little, knowing that others also recognized the qualities of the man I had loved for 38 years. But nothing could erase the pain, the immense void that had settled in my life. The following months were the darkest of my life. I woke every morning expecting to see Robert on the other side of the bed, only to find the space empty. I made coffee for 2 out of habit, only to remember I was alone. The house seemed too big, too quiet, too cold. I cried every day, sometimes several times a day. There were moments when the pain was so intense it was physical, as if someone were squeezing my heart tightly. I lost my appetite, lost over 20 pounds, and stopped grooming myself properly. My friends and family worried, but I couldn't get out of that hole. It was Michael who saved me from sinking completely. He called every day without fail. He came to visit me every weekend. He took me for walks, forced me to leave the house, kept me company. In the first months after Robert's death, Michael practically lived with me. He worked remotely from Portland so he could be close. He cooked for me, took care of the housework, held me when I cried. He was my safe haven, my anchor. Without him, I don't know if I would have made it through that period. Our mother-son bond became even stronger. Here was all I had left of Robert, an extension of the love we had shared. 2 years after Robert's death, I was finally beginning to rebuild myself. I went back to teaching, picked up some hobbies, and started going out with friends. The pain was still there, always would be, but I had learned to live with it, to keep living despite it. Michael was still present, but now I felt strong enough to be alone, to move on with my life independently. I encouraged him to focus more on his own life, to go out with friends, to date. He had become so focused on taking care of me that he had neglected his own personal life. It was then, on that memorable Saturday in March, that Michael showed up at home with Jennifer. I remember every detail of that day. It was a sunny morning, rare in Portland at that time of year. I was in the garden pruning the roses when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door, and there stood my son with a smile that lit up his entire face. Beside him was a tall, elegant blonde woman with clear blue eyes and a toothpasted Virtus smile. She wore a delicate floral dress and low-heeled shoes. She looked like something out of a fashion magazine. "Mommy," Michael said with an excitement I hadn't seen in years, "I want you to meet someone very special. This is Jennifer." She extended a delicate hand toward me. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Margaret," she said softly. "Michael never stops talking about you." I noticed his slightly sophisticated accent, his erect posture, and the careful way he chose his words. I invited them both in, offered them coffee and freshly baked pastries. We sat in the living room and talked for hours. Jennifer explained how she had grown up in California, how she was an only child, how she had studied marketing, and how she worked at an advertising agency in Seattle. She spoke articulately and intelligently, showing genuine interest. When I told stories about Michael's childhood, laughing at the right moments and asking pertinent questions. During that first visit, I watched closely how Jennifer and Michael interacted. There was a visible affection between them. He held her hand, looked admiringly when she spoke, sought approval in her eyes. She reciprocated with smiles, gentle touches on his arm, and knowing glances. They seemed like a loving and happy couple. I was happy. My son deserved to be happy. He deserved to find someone to share his life with. After years of caring for me, he was finally focusing on his own happiness. Visits became more frequent. Over the next few weeks, Jennifer and Michael came over almost every weekend. Jennifer always brought some small but thoughtful gift, a package of homemade cookies, a bouquet of flowers, a scented candle. She always offered to help in the kitchen, always complimented everything, always said the right things. She told me about her family, how her parents had divorced when she was a teenager, how she had a distant relationship with her mother who had moved abroad. He talked about how he admired the close relationship Michael had with me, how he wished he had had that in his own life. It touched me deeply. I began to see her not just as my son's girlfriend, but as someone who also needed a mother figure, a welcoming figure, a family. In May of that year, 2 months after meeting Jennifer, Michael called me asking to come over for dinner, saying he had something important to talk about. I prepared his favorite dinner, set the dining room table with the embroidered tablecloth he only used on special occasions, and lit candles. When they arrived, I noticed they were both visibly nervous and excited. Halfway through dinner, Michael held Jennifer's hand across the table and announced, "Mommy, I proposed to Jennifer and she said yes. Let's get married." I got up from my chair and hugged them both, tears of joy streaming down my face. Finally, Michael had found his partner, someone to build a life with. Jennifer hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for accepting me into the family, Margaret. That means a lot to me." Wedding preparations began immediately. Jennifer involved me in every detail, asking my opinion on everything. We spent entire afternoons visiting florists, tasting cakes in bakeries, and choosing invitations. She always valued my opinion, always made me feel important in the process. I remember one specific day when we went together to choose a wedding dress. We visited 5 different stores. In each one, Jennifer tried on several styles and always left the fitting room asking me, "What do you think, Margaret?" "You know, Michael, which one do you think he'll like best?" That touched me. I was being included, consulted, valued. When Jennifer finally found the perfect dress, a delicate lace design with a long train, she came out of the dressing room, twirled around so I could see it from every angle, and asked, "This is the dress, isn't it?" I was crying with emotion. "It's perfect, Jennifer. You're going to be the most beautiful bride Michael could ever dream of." She came over to where I was sitting and hugged me right there in the middle of the store. "I wish you were here for this moment," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't have my mother around, and you filled that space. Thank you for that." Those words touched my heart deeply. I felt I was gaining not just a daughter-in-law, but a daughter. As the wedding approached, expenses mounted. Michael and Jennifer had established a budget, but as with every wedding, the actual costs exceeded what was planned. In July, about 3 months before the scheduled date, Michael approached me, visibly embarrassed. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "you know, I've never liked borrowing money, but the wedding costs are exceeding our budget. Could you help with some of it? Obviously, we'll pay it back." I didn't even let him finish. Of course I would. It was my only son's wedding, a once-in-a lifetime event. Plus, I had Robert's life insurance money that had been saved without a specific purpose. What better purpose could there be than investing in my son's happiness? I transferred $22,000 into their account. Michael tried to argue that it was too much, but I insisted. I wanted that day to be perfect, unforgettable. I didn't want them to start their married life in debt or with financial worries. The wedding took place on a beautiful October afternoon. The ceremony was outdoors in a botanical garden on the banks of the Willamette River. The weather was perfect with soft sunshine and light breeze that made the leaves dance. Jennifer was radiant in her white dress, walking down the rose-petal-strewn aisle. Michael was elegant in his dark gray suit, his eyes welling with emotion as he watched the bride approach. When they exchanged vows, speaking of eternal love, companionship, and mutual respect, I cried profusely. I looked up at the sky and mentally spoke to Robert. Our son has found his soulmate love. He will be happy. The reception was wonderful. Delicious food, live music, impeccable decor. Jennifer had chosen every detail perfectly. During the reception, she made a point of introducing me to all the guests as the best mother-in-law in the world, the person who had made that day possible. I felt on cloud nine. The newlyweds went on their honeymoon to Bora Bora, a paradise destination they had dreamed of. They were away for 2 weeks. When they returned, they began settling into married life. They had rented a house in a residential neighborhood of Seattle, an older but charming house in need of some renovations. The structure was solid, but the interior was dated, especially the kitchen and bathroom. About a month after returning from their honeymoon, Jennifer called me. "Margaret," she began in that sweet voice, "can I ask you for some advice?" "Of course, dear," I replied immediately. She then explained that they wanted to renovate the kitchen and bathroom, that they had requested quotes, and the prices were far above their expectations. "We spent a lot on the wedding," she explained, "and now money is tight. I don't know what to do. The kitchen is so old, I'm embarrassed to have guests over." I didn't think twice. Jennifer said firmly, "Let me help you with this. You're my son and daughter-in-law, my family. I want you to have a comfortable home, a place where you can create good memories." She tried to refuse, saying she'd already asked for too much, that I'd already helped too much with the wedding. But I insisted. The next day, I transferred $15,000 into their account. Michael called me as soon as he saw the transfer, saying it was too much, that he felt bad accepting it. "Son," I said calmly, "your father and I have worked our whole lives to ensure you have a good life. This money is for the family. It doesn't hurt me to help. Besides, you'll pay me back when you can. There's no rush." He agreed, promising to do so as soon as they sorted out their finances. The renovation took about 3 months. Jennifer sent me progress photos almost daily. "Look how the new kitchen turned out, Margaret." She sent it with a photo of gleaming white cabinets being installed. "The bathroom is turning out like a dream." It was accompanied by images of a modern bathroom with a glass shower and marble finishes. I was happy to see her excitement, knowing I had contributed to the transformation. When the renovation was finally complete, I was invited to see it in person. I drove to Seattle on a sunny Saturday in February, eager to see the results. The house had been transformed. The kitchen had new cabinets, granite countertops, and modern stainless steel appliances. The bathroom was completely different, with sophisticated finishes and recessed lighting. Jennifer gave me a complete tour, showing me every detail and explaining every choice. At the end, she hugged me tightly. "None of this would be possible without you, Margaret," she said with tears in her eyes. "You're the best mother-in-law I could have asked for." I felt a warmth in my chest. I was building something beautiful with that family. I was being useful, needed, and loved. I started visiting Seattle more frequently. Almost every weekend, I'd hit the road and drive the 3 hours to their house. I'd bring home-cooked meals because I knew they both worked hard and barely had time to cook. I'd make huge pots of bolognese sauce, lasagnas, soups, and pies. I'd freeze everything in portions and fill their freezer. Jennifer always thanked me profusely, saying it made their lives much easier during their busy week. Besides cooking, I helped with the housework. I spent Saturdays cleaning bathrooms, vacuuming carpets, and organizing closets. I'd grocery shop for them, bring them cleaning supplies, things I knew they needed. Michael worked long hours at the tech company, often staying late at the office. Jennifer had started a master's degree in digital marketing and spent her weekends studying and writing academic papers. I felt useful helping with the household, chores, freeing up time for them to focus on their professional and academic responsibilities. During those months, Jennifer and I developed a routine. I'd arrive on Saturday morning, and she'd usually still be in her pajamas drinking coffee with books spread out on the table. "Margaret, I'm so glad you're here," she'd say with a smile. "I just needed the boost. We have a huge amount of work to do this week." I'd get to work while she went to study. I'd clean the entire house, leaving everything sparkling. I'd prepare a delicious lunch. In the afternoon, we'd usually do something together, like watch a movie or take a walk in the nearby park. Jennifer would talk about her master's degree, the challenges she faced, and the colleagues who irritated her. I listened attentively, offering advice when appropriate and always offering emotional support. I felt I was developing a true relationship with her, one of mother and daughter, not just mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Sundays were usually quieter. Michael would take the day off and the three of us would spend time together. We'd have brunch, watch football games on TV, and talk about everything. These were simple but precious moments. I'd return to Portland late Sunday with a full heart, happy to be close to my son and Jennifer. Happy to be such a present part of their lives. I no longer felt alone, no longer felt that immense emptiness Robert's death had left. I had purpose again, an active and present family. It was in April of the following year, about a year and a half after the wedding, that I received the call that would change everything. I was grading my students' papers when my cell phone rang. It was Jennifer, and from her voice I could tell immediately that something important was happening. "Margaret," she said with palpable emotion, "I have news for you. I'm pregnant, we're having a baby." I dropped the pen I was holding and placed my hand over my heart. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Completely serious," she confirmed. "I just took the test and it came back positive. You're going to be a grandmother, Margaret." I burst into tears of joy. A baby, a grandchild, a new life that would carry the DNA of my Robert, my Michael, our family. It was as if a part of Robert was somehow returning, perpetuating itself through this new generation. From that day on, I dedicated myself completely to helping with the preparations for the baby's arrival. Jennifer was in her first trimester and experiencing severe morning sickness. I began traveling to Seattle even more frequently, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, to help with whatever was needed. I cooked light meals she could eat, kept her company during bouts of nausea, and drove her to doctor's appointments when Michael couldn't leave work. I became her main support network during that difficult period of early pregnancy. When we found out at the 20-week ultrasound that it was a boy, I was ecstatic. A boy just like Michael had been. How beautiful it would be to see the family's genetics manifesting in that little child. We began preparing the baby's room. Jennifer had chosen a nautical theme with navy blue and white colors. I bought the crib, the changing table, the dresser, the nursing chair. I spent over $5,000 on furniture alone. Then came the clothes, onesies, pajamas, bodysuits, tiny socks. I bought so many clothes that Jennifer laughed, saying the baby wouldn't be able to wear half of them before he outgrew them. I bought the Topopholin stroller, the safest car seat on the market, baby monitors, educational toys, children's books. I prepared a complete layette. My bank account was dwindling rapidly, but I didn't care. I was investing in my grandson, in the continuation of my family. On weekends, Jennifer and I spent hours decorating the room. I painted the walls a soft, delicate blue, taking great care to leave no gaps. We hung decorative pictures with boat and anchor motifs. We assembled the furniture, organized the clothes by size in labeled drawers, and set up the diaper changing station with all the necessary supplies. The room turned out beautifully, a cozy space perfect for welcoming the baby. Jennifer posted photos on social media and received dozens of complimentary comments. She always made a point of tagging me, saying that none of it would have been possible without the incredible grandmother the baby would have. As Jennifer's belly grew, I became increasingly present. In the final months of her pregnancy, I was practically living in their house. I helped Jennifer get up from the couch when she couldn't do it herself, massaged her swollen feet, and prepared nutritious meals to ensure she and the baby were well fed. Michael worked so much that he barely saw his wife during the week. I was the one there providing the physical and emotional support Jennifer needed. Ethan was born on a cold December morning, 15 days before Christmas. Jennifer went into labor at 2 in the morning. Michael called me frantically, asking me to come to the hospital, saying he needed me there. I drove at top speed, arriving at the hospital before they even finished the admission procedures. I stayed in the waiting room throughout the labor, which lasted 12 intense hours. Michael came out periodically to give me updates, always pale and nervous. Finally, at 2 in the afternoon, he emerged with a huge smile on his face. "It's a boy, Mommy. Ethan is born. Everything is fine with him and Jennifer." I cried with emotion right there in the hospital hallway. When I was finally led into the room to meet my grandson, I felt as if time had stopped. Jennifer lay in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a little blue bundle. Michael stood beside her, his eyes red from crying with happiness. "Come meet your grandson," Margaret, Jennifer said, holding the baby out to me. I took the little being in my arms and looked at his perfect face. He had his mother's blue eyes, his father's dark hair, a small, perfect nose, and pink lips. I felt an immediate and profound connection, as if part of Robert had returned through that little child. "Hello, my little Ethan," I whispered to him. "I'm your grandmother, and I will love you forever." The first few days after Ethan's arrival were intense. Jennifer and Michael returned home from the hospital on the third day, completely lost and exhausted. Newborn babies are challenging, waking every 2 or 3 hours to nurse crying for reasons new parents can't fathom. I temporarily moved into their home, sleeping in the guest room, available 24/7. During the early mornings when Ethan woke up crying, I was the one who got up first. I'd go to their room and offer to help. "Let me change the diaper, Jennifer, you rest," I'd say. Michael was working the next day and Jennifer was recovering from the birth, so it made sense that I, who had no other obligations, would take on some of that burden. I'd change the baby's diaper, take him to Jennifer to breastfeed, then pick him up and rock him back to sleep. Many nights I only slept 3 or 4 hours, but I didn't care. I was helping my family, caring for my grandson. Jennifer had decided to breastfeed exclusively, so she needed to be available to feed Ethan frequently. What I could do was take care of everything else, cleaning the house, washing and folding the countless baby clothes that got dirty daily. Preparing nutritious meals for Jennifer and shopping. I became the structure that allowed her to focus solely on breastfeeding and recovering. Michael returned to work after only 2 weeks of paternity leave, so during the day Jennifer and I were alone with Ethan, I taught her things I'd learned when Michael was a baby. How to bathe, how to trim tiny nails, how to soothe a colicky baby. Jennifer seemed grateful for the lessons, always saying she wouldn't know what to do without me. The following months continued at this same pace. I continued to travel to Seattle several times a week, sometimes staying for days at a time. Ethan was growing rapidly, becoming stronger and more alert each week. Seeing my grandson develop, reaching milestones like smiling, holding objects, and sitting was thrilling. I was there for almost every moment. Jennifer posted many photos on social media and always included me, writing captions like, "Thank you, Grandma, for your unconditional support, or we wouldn't have made it without you." I felt fulfilled, needed, and a fundamental part of that family. It was when Ethan turned 6 months old that I began to notice subtle changes in Jennifer's behavior. Changes so small that I initially ignored them, thinking I was imagining things. She began making comments about the way I interacted with the baby. "Margaret, that's not how you hold him. You're letting his head hang loose," she once said with a slightly impatient tone. Or, "Margaret, that toy isn't appropriate for his age. It could be dangerous." There was always something I was doing wrong, some detail that needed fixing. At first, I accepted the criticism without question. After all, she was the mother, and she had every right to set the rules for caring for her son. But the comments became more frequent, and the tone more acerbic. One day in particular stuck in my memory. I was giving Ethan a bottle, something Jennifer had asked me to do because she needed to shower and get ready. I was holding the baby comfortably in my arms with the bottle at the angle I'd used hundreds of times with Michael. Jennifer emerged from the shower still in her robe, and when she saw me, she came quickly toward me. "You're holding him wrong, Margaret," she said loudly, almost shouting. He might choke like that before I could react. She practically snatched Ethan from my arms. The baby, startled by the sudden movement, began to cry. "Did you see what you did?" she said, looking at me irritably. "Now he's upset." I stood there shocked, unsure of what to say. Michael was in the room and witnessed the entire scene, but he simply lowered his eyes and went back to working on his laptop, avoiding involvement. That incident was the first of many. Gradually, Jennifer began to question everything I did related to Ethan. How I dressed him, Margaret, those overalls are too hot, you'll make him sweat. How I played with him, Margaret, you're shaking him too much, he won't be able to sleep. How I rocked him, Margaret, you can't rock him like that, you have to slow down. Each visit became a minefield where I had to walk on eggshells trying to guess what she would approve or disapprove of. Spontaneity disappeared. The pleasure of caring for my grandson was replaced by anxiety and insecurity. Visitors who had previously been greeted with smiles and hugs began to be met with quiet sighs and weary expressions. Jennifer stopped greeting me cheerfully when I arrived. The most she received was a cold, distant hello. There were no longer those warm hugs, no more enthusiasm. I began to feel like I was bothering, disrupting, invading a space that was no longer mine. I tried to talk to Michael about it, hoping he could mediate the situation, explain to Jennifer that I only wanted to help. But he always defended his wife. "Mommy, she's overwhelmed," he'd say wearily. "Taking care of a baby is much harder than you remember. She's just stressed. You need to understand and give her space." That word started to appear more and more frequently, space. Jennifer needs space. The family needs space. The three of you need time alone as your own family. Okay, I understood in theory. A couple with a new baby really needs time alone to adjust to create their own dynamics. But how could I give them space when I could clearly see they were overwhelmed, when I could see the exhaustion? On their faces, when I knew my help would make everything easier, I decided to take their advice and began spacing out my visits. Instead of going 2 or 3 times a week, I started going only on weekends. Instead of staying for several days, I started returning on the same day. I hoped this would improve things, that Jennifer would notice and appreciate my visits when they became more infrequent. But the opposite happened. The less I showed up, the more distant Jennifer became. When I called to check on Ethan, she responded in monosyllables. "He's fine. He's growing. I can't talk right now. I have to go." And the call would end abruptly. I tried texting them to ask if they needed anything, if there was anything I could do. The responses were cold and evasive. "Everything's under control. Thank you." Or simply a thumbs up emoji without any text. I began to feel unwanted, like I was a burden to them rather than a help. One specific situation hurt me deeply. It was Michael's birthday in July, and I had planned to throw him a surprise party. I called Jennifer a few weeks in advance to organize. She listened to my plan and responded curtly. "I don't think it's a good idea, Margaret. Michael is very busy at work. He won't have time for parties. Let's do something small, just the three of us." I insisted that it could be something simple, just a few close friends. But she was emphatic. "No, Margaret. Please respect our decision." I hung up the phone feeling like I'd been slapped in the face. It was my own son's birthday, and I was being left out of the celebration. On his birthday, I called in the morning to wish him well. Michael answered excitedly, thanked me for the birthday wishes, and we talked for a few minutes. I asked what they were going to do to celebrate. "Oh, we'll just have dinner at home, nothing major," he replied. I could hear Jennifer in the background saying something. Then Michael said, "Mom, I have to go. Ethan's waking up. We'll talk later." I spent the entire day alone at home, thinking about my son celebrating his birthday without me. I cried several times throughout the day. It wasn't about the party itself. It was about the symbolism. I was being gradually removed from their lives, and it hurt so much. In August, I tried to invite myself over, claiming I'd bought some gifts for Ethan. Jennifer replied that weekend wasn't a good time because Ethan's sleep was irregular and they needed to focus on establishing a routine. I suggested the following weekend. "That one isn't good either. We have commitments." "What about the one after that? We'll see, Margaret. I'll let you know." She never did. I tried calling a few times, but she didn't answer. She sent messages that went unanswered. It was Michael who eventually got back to me about a week later. "Mommy," he said in a serious voice that startled me, "we need to talk." My heart raced. Did something happen to Ethan? Is everything okay? "No, it's nothing to do with Ethan. He's fine." But Jennifer and I had a serious talk and we need to tell you about something. I waited in silence, my stomach churning with anxiety. Mommy, he continued, Jennifer is feeling suffocated. She thinks you show up too much call, too much are too present in our lives. We need more autonomy as a family. So we talked and thought it would be best if you spaced out your visits more, maybe once a month, and always give us advance notice. Those words fell over me like an avalanche. Once a month. I would see my grandson only once a month. The child I had helped bring into the world, whom I had cared for since his first days of life, whom I loved with all my heart. Michael, I said, my voice trembling as I fought back tears, I just want to help you. If I'm doing something wrong, tell me and I'll fix it. But please don't take me away from Ethan. It's not about you doing something wrong, he replied, his tone trying to be gentle but firm. It's about us needing space to be a family. And Jennifer feels, well, she feels judged by you. She thinks you're criticizing the way she cares for Ethan, who's trying to take over the mothering role for her. I was speechless. Was I criticizing Jennifer? Was I trying to take on the role of mother? None of it made sense to me. All I had done was help support, be there. When did I criticize her? When did I try to replace her as a mother? I tried to argue, to explain my side, but Michael had already made up his mind. He had taken his wife's side, as perhaps every good husband should. The conversation ended with him reaffirming once a month mom, and always with advance notice. I need to ask you to respect that. I hung up the phone and burst into tears. I cried for hours, a deep cry that came from the depths of my soul. The days that followed were filled with paralyzing sadness. I could barely eat, sleep, or concentrate on anything. I lost weight rapidly, and my friends began commenting that I looked ill. A close friend, Linda, came to visit and was shocked by my condition. Margaret, what's happening to you? She asked, holding my hands. I poured everything out, telling her about Jennifer, about Michael, about how I was being separated from my grandson. Linda listened attentively and then said something that resonated with me. You're losing yourself in this situation. You need to take care of yourself, seek professional help. You're developing depression. I denied it at the time, saying I was just sad but would be okay. But deep down, I knew she was right. I was falling into a dark hole. September arrived, and with it Labor Day, an American holiday celebrating workers. Traditionally, it was a day we'd have family barbecues. I called Michael, hoping to be invited. He brushed it off, saying they were spending the holiday relaxing, no big deal. On the day of the holiday, I saw on social media that Jennifer had posted photos of a barbecue at their house with several friends. There was plenty of food, drinks, and decorations. Dozens of people were there. Everyone except me. I was deliberately excluded from a family celebration that took place at my own son's house. It shattered me in a way that's hard to describe. I blocked Jennifer on social media because I couldn't stand seeing those scenes of happiness from which I was excluded. October arrived, and I tried to respect their request to visit only once a month. I let them know in advance that I wanted to visit on the third weekend. Jennifer took 3 days to respond, and when she did, it was to say that they had other commitments that weekend. I suggested the following. Also not good. By the end of October, I had gone almost 2 months without seeing my grandson. 2 months in which he had grown, changed, developed new skills that I hadn't witnessed. When Michael finally allowed me to visit on the last day of October, I barely recognized Ethan. He was bigger, smarter. When I reached out to pick him up, he cried, no longer recognizing me. That broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. The visit was extremely awkward. Jennifer barely spoke to me, staying in her room most of the time, claiming she was studying for an important master's exam. Michael tried to keep up a conversation, but it was obvious he was uncomfortable. Ethan kept crying every time I tried to approach him. I ended up leaving earlier than planned, unable to handle this situation. During the drive back to Portland, I cried uncontrollably. How had it gotten to this point? How had a relationship that seemed so good deteriorated so quickly and so completely? November arrived, and with it the anticipation of Thanksgiving. That had always been an important holiday for our family. Even after Robert's death, Michael and I maintained the tradition of celebrating together. I called him in early November to make plans. Mom, he said awkwardly, this year we're spending Thanksgiving with Jennifer's family in California. She insists on going because she hasn't visited her mother in years. I felt the ground disappear from under my feet. But Michael, we always spend this holiday together, I managed to say through the lump in my throat. It's our tradition. I know, Mom, but we also need to create traditions with Jennifer's family. You understand, right? No, I didn't. But what could I do? I vented about how difficult being alone on Thanksgiving would be, but Michael was adamant. We've already bought the tickets, Mom. We'll be there for 4 days. When we get back, we can plan a lunch with you. I spent Thanksgiving completely alone. I tried to accept invitations from friends, but I couldn't. I wanted to stay in my grief, immerse myself in it, feel it completely. I stayed home looking through old photo albums. Photos from when Michael was a child, from when Robert was still alive, from when we were a happy, close-knit family. I cried looking at each photo, each memory frozen in time. I cried for what we had and for what I lost. I cried for the husband who died for the son, who moved away for the grandson who no longer knew me. That night was one of the darkest and loneliest of my life. December arrived, bringing with it Ethan's first birthday. My first grandson would be turning 1. Obviously, I wanted to be there. I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to see him eat his first cake and make that adorable mess babies make. I called Michael earlier that month to ask about the party plans. There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line. Actually, Mom, he finally said we've decided to do something very intimate. Just the 3 of us. Something quiet, no big party. I felt like someone had stuck a knife in my heart and twisted it. Michael, I said, my voice breaking, I'm his grandmother. How can I not be there for his first birthday? He sighed. Jennifer thinks it's better this way. She doesn't want stress. She doesn't want a lot of people. She wants it to be a special moment just for the 3 of us. You can come another day, see Ethan, give him the presents. But it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the birthday. It wouldn't be that magical moment of seeing a child interact with the cake. It's candles for the first time. I tried to argue, beg, negotiate. I offered to throw the party at my house. I offered to pay for everything. I offered to just stay for the party and leave right after. But Michael was adamant. The decision was made. On Ethan's birthday, I stayed home in bed all day. I couldn't stop crying. I looked at the photos of baby Ethan on my phone. The photos of when I first held him in the hospital, of when I cared for him in the first weeks of his life. How had I gotten to this point of being excluded from his birthday? That night, I saw a photo Jennifer had posted on social media. It was Ethan, his face cake smeared, smiling for the camera. The caption read, "My little prince turned 1. How lucky I am to be the mother of this incredible little person. Celebrating with my family just the way I dreamed." Those words, deliberately excluding my family, hurt me deeply. I didn't comment on the photo. I didn't like it. I just closed the app and cried some more. That night, I seriously considered seeking professional help. Linda was right. I was developing severe depression. I couldn't live like this anymore, with that constant pain, that feeling of rejection and abandonment. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a blur of sadness and anxiety. I took antidepressants prescribed by my doctor, started therapy, and tried to take care of my mental health. The therapist asked me questions about my relationship with Jennifer, about behaviors I might have engaged in that might explain that rejection. No matter how much I scrutinized every interaction, every conversation, every moment, I couldn't find anything that justified that treatment. Yes, perhaps I had been too present, too available, but it had all been with good intentions, with genuine love. I had never openly criticized Jennifer, never tried to replace her as a mother, never been disrespectful. In mid-December, to my surprise, Michael called me. His tone was different, lighter. "Mommy," he said, "I know things have been hard lately, but it's Christmas. The family should be together for Christmas. We'd love for you to come spend the 25th with us." Jennifer agreed. My heart leaped. Finally, they were finally including me again. I felt a surge of hope rekindle within me. Maybe things could get better. Maybe Jennifer had reflected, realized she'd been too harsh. Maybe we could start over, rebuild that unsigwit relationship. I spent the next few days preparing for Christmas with obsessive care. I went to countless stores searching for the perfect gifts. For Jennifer, I chose an expensive jewelry, set a pearl necklace and earrings that cost $800. For Michael, I bought the watch he'd mentioned months ago. He wanted to have an elegant Swiss watch. For Ethan, I bought a stack of educational toys, clothes, and books. I spent nearly $3,000 on gifts. I also cooked for 3 days straight, preparing all of Michael's favorite foods. I made a gigantic turkey stuffed with a special recipe. Robert loved creamy mashed potatoes with bacon and chives, homemade. Cranberry sauce, cinnamon, apple pie, pecan pie, and gingerbread cookies. I prepared enough food to feed 10 people. On the morning of December 25th, Christmas Day, I woke before sunrise. I dressed carefully, choosing a festive red dress I'd bought especially for the occasion. I put on light makeup, red lipstick, and discreet earrings. I wanted to look pretty presentable and make a good impression. I loaded my car with gift bags and pots and pans of food. The car was so packed I could barely see in the rearview mirror. During the 3-hour drive to Seattle, I listened to Christmas music and tried to keep my spirits high. This would be a new beginning, a day of reconciliation, a memorable Christmas. I arrived at Michael's house around 10 in the morning. The house was beautifully decorated for Christmas. Lights hung on the balcony, a large green wreath hung on the front door, and a Christmas tree covered in ornaments and fairy lights was visible through the living room window. I rang the doorbell, my heart racing. Jennifer opened the door. She was wearing an elegant red dress, much prettier than mine. Her hair perfectly styled and loose curls and impeccable makeup highlighted her blue eyes. She was holding Ethan in her arms. The baby was dressed in an adorable red Santa Claus outfit with white trim. "Hello, Margaret," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Merry Christmas." "Come in." There was no hug, no kiss on the cheek, just that cold, formal greeting. Michael appeared behind her and gave me a quick hug. "Hi, Mom. Merry Christmas. Let me help you with that." He grabbed some bags and helped me carry everything inside. I put the presents under the Christmas tree and took the food to the kitchen. Jennifer looked at all those pots and pans with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Wow, you brought a lot," she said. "But there's no need to bother. I've already prepared a full lunch. Everything's ready." I felt a slight unease, but I tried not to show it. "Oh, no problem," I replied, forcing a smile. "We can save it for later then. It's always good to have extra food, right?" She didn't answer, just began arranging her food on the platters. I noticed she had prepared practically the same things as me: turkey, mashed potatoes, pies. My food, which had been made with so much love and dedication, was put in the refrigerator without even being tasted. I tried not to let it get to me. It was Christmas. I was with my family. That's what mattered. The morning passed awkwardly and uncomfortably. I tried to play with Ethan, but he cried every time I approached. He no longer recognized me. It hurt deeply, but I hid it. Jennifer was always nearby when I interacted with the baby, monitoring my every move, ready to intervene. Michael was visibly tense, constantly checking his phone, answering work emails, even though it was Christmas. The atmosphere was heavy, artificial. There was none of the genuine, spontaneous joy that characterizes a family Christmas. At lunchtime, we sat at the table Jennifer had impeccably set. White tablecloth with gold accents, fine china crystal glasses. Everything was very beautiful and formal. Her food was delicious, I have to admit. The turkey was succulent, the mashed potatoes creamy. But I could barely eat with a lump in my throat that made it difficult to swallow. Jennifer dominated the entire lunch conversation. Talking about the master's degree, she was nearing completion. The job opportunities that were emerging, their plans to travel the following year. I tried to join in a few times, telling her about my students, about events in Portland, but I realized no one was really listening. Jennifer would quickly change the subject, bringing the attention back to her and Michael. After lunch, it was time to open presents. Ethan was too young to understand, but seeing the excitement in his eyes as he ripped through the wrapping paper was enchanting. He'd received tons of toys from Jennifer and Michael. When it was time for my presents, Jennifer opened them mechanically, quickly, without the excitement that usually accompanies opening presents. She picked up the jewelry box, opened it, and looked at it for 2 seconds. "Oh, how beautiful, Margaret, thank you," she said in a monotone. She closed the box and set it aside. Michael was a little warmer when he opened the watch. "Wow, Mom, that must have been expensive," he said. "You didn't need it. But thanks, I'll wear it a lot." Ah! I slipped the watch on, admired it for a few seconds, then took it off and put it back in the box. That was it. My expensive gifts had been discarded in seconds without any real appreciation. The afternoon began to weigh heavily on me. I tried to find ways to be useful to participate. I offered to help with the dishes. "I've already loaded everything," Jennifer replied dryly. I offered to help organize Ethan's gifts. "Everything's under control." I offered to play with the baby. "He needs his afternoon nap. It's best to let him get on with his routine." I was gradually excluded from everything, reduced to a mere observer in my own son's house. Around 4 in the afternoon, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Opening the refrigerator, I saw all the food I had prepared still there untouched. No one had eaten any of it, or even tasted it. All that food that had taken 3 days to prepare, made with love and care, was going to waste. I felt a deep sadness. I considered taking it all home, but that would be humiliating. I decided to heat up a piece of my apple pie to eat since no one else would enjoy it. I put a generous slice on my plate and microwaved it. I was waiting for it to heat up when Jennifer walked into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" she asked with an accusatory tone that surprised me. "I'm just heating up a piece of my pie," I replied softly. "No one ate it, so I thought I'd make the most of it." I didn't finish my sentence. Jennifer walked firmly to the microwave, opened the door, grabbed the plate inside, and without saying a word, tipped it directly into the trash. The pie fell out with a wet thud as it hit the other trash. I froze my brain trying to process what I had just witnessed. Jennifer dropped her plate in the sink, then slowly turned to me. Her blue eyes were ice cold, her face completely expressionless. She leaned in close, so close that I could smell her expensive cloying perfume invading my space. She leaned in slightly and, in a low, controlled, venomous voice, whispered those words I will never forget: "Eat like a dog." The world stopped in that instant. Every sound vanished. It was like being underwater, everything muffled and distant. I couldn't react, couldn't speak, couldn't even fully process what I'd just heard. Jennifer stepped away, fixed her hair, and walked out of the kitchen with calm steps as if nothing had happened. She left me there alone, standing like a statue, staring at the trash can where my food had been thrown, mentally repeating those horrible words. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been seconds or minutes. I completely lost track. When I finally managed to move, I grabbed my bag with trembling hands. I put on my coat. I went to the living room where Michael was playing with Ethan on the rug. On leaving, I managed my voice strangely calm. "Soon, Mom?" he asked, surprised. "But it's still early. It's getting dark. Are you going to drive at night?" "Yes, I am," I replied, avoiding looking at Jennifer, who was sitting on the couch. "Thank you for your hospitality." I left that house like an automaton, got in the car and started the engine. It wasn't until I was on the road, the house already disappearing in the rearview mirror, that the tears began to fall. I cried the entire drive back. 3 hours of uninterrupted tears, of sobs that tore through my chest, of a pain that went far beyond the physical. It wasn't just emotional pain. It was pain in my soul, a wound so deep I didn't know if I would ever heal. I arrived home late at night. I walked in, threw my bag on the couch, and went upstairs. I laid down on Robert's bed on the side that had been empty for so long. I hugged his pillow, which still held a faint scent of his perfume, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day he died. I cried for everything I had lost: my husband, my family, my dignity, my purpose. I cried until I had no tears left, until my body was completely exhausted. Around 3 in the morning, I finally fell into a restless, nightmare-filled sleep. I woke up the next day feeling worse than ever. My eyes were so swollen I could barely open them properly. My head throbbed with an intense migraine. My whole body ached as if I'd been beaten. But none of that compared to the emotional pain, the immense emptiness in my chest. I lay in bed, unable to get up. I no longer had the will to do anything, not even to live. Dark thoughts began to invade my mind. What were you doing here? Why continue? I had no family, no purpose, nothing left. It was in this deplorable state that around 10 in the morning, my phone began to ring insistently. I stared at the screen with blurry eyes, Michael. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. He called again. On the fifth try, I answered just to stop the annoying noise. "Hello," he said, his voice hoarse from crying. "Mom," he practically shouted into the phone. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay? I'm home, Michael," I replied in a monotone, emotionless voice. "Why, I need you to come here now," he said quickly, the urgency in his voice palpable. "Please, it's very important. I can't explain it over the phone. It's about you, about everything that happened. Jennifer is very sick. Please, Mom, just come." I was confused. What could have happened? Why would Jennifer be upset, and what did that have to do with me? Part of me wanted to refuse to say. I would never set foot in that house again. But another part, the part that still loved my son, despite everything, that still wanted to believe there could be some kind of reconciliation, agreed. "Okay, I'll be right there. I'll leave now." I drove to Seattle in a daze. I wasn't listening to music. I wasn't thinking about anything. I just drove automatically. When I arrived, it was a little after 1 p.m. Michael opened the door before I even knocked, as if he'd been waiting there. His face was pale with deep circles under his eyes, and his eyes were red. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Mom," he said, gripping my hands tightly. "Mom, I need to apologize. I need to apologize so deeply." He pulled me into the house and led me to the living room. Jennifer was sitting in an armchair, her face erect from crying. Her flawless makeup from the day before had faded, revealing dark circles under her eyes and red puffy eyes. She held a tissue in her hands already wet with tears. When she saw me, she tried to look at me but couldn't maintain eye contact, immediately lowering her head. Michael made me sit on the couch. He remained standing, clearly agitated. "Mom," he began, his voice trembling, "I discovered something terrible tonight. Something that completely changed everything I'd thought about the past few months." I waited in silence, completely lost. Michael continued, "After you left yesterday, Jennifer drank. She's been drinking alone a lot lately, something I didn't know was happening. Yesterday, she drank too much. Much more than usual. I thought she'd gone to sleep, but a few hours later, around midnight, I woke to noises coming from the kitchen. I went downstairs and found her alone, sitting on the floor, crying and talking to herself." Michael took his phone from his pocket. "I recorded it, Mom," he said in a choked voice. "I recorded it because I initially thought she was talking to someone on the phone. But then I realized she was alone venting to herself. And what she said, ... What?" she confessed. He showed me his phone. On the screen was a video. Hesitantly, I pressed play. The video showed Jennifer sitting on the kitchen floor, her hair a mess, her red dress wrinkled, a half-empty bottle of wine beside her. She cried profusely, sobbing, talking to herself. "I'm horrible," she said in the video. "I'm a terrible person, a sick person. Why did I do that to Margaret? She just wanted to help, just wanted to be part of the family, and I treated her like that. I threw her food in the trash. I said that horrible thing. How could I do that?" The video continued with Jennifer, self-flagellating, talking about what a bad person she was, about how she didn't deserve the family she had. Michael paused the video. "That was just the beginning," he said. Then she began confessing things. Many things. Michael then recounted, his voice breaking several times, what Jennifer had revealed in her drunken reverie. She had confessed that she had always been jealous of me, intense and unhealthy jealousy. Jealous of the close relationship I had with Michael, jealous of his love for me, jealous of how much he respected and admired me. Jennifer had grown up in a dysfunctional family where she never received adequate maternal love. Her mother was cold and distant, focused solely on her own career. Her father was an alcoholic and absent. She grew up lacking affection, attention, and unconditional love. When she met Michael and saw how close we were, instead of feeling happy to have found a welcoming family, she began to feel jealous. Jealous of something she never had and that I naturally felt with my son. So Michael continued, with tears streaming down his face. "She decided to push me away. She decided to create distance between you and me. It was all calculated, Mom. Every comment about you interfering too. Much every criticism of how you cared for Ethan, every request for a space-it, was all deliberate manipulation. She lied to me saying you judged her, that you tried to take over as Ethan's mother, that you made passive-aggressive comments. None of it was true. She made it all up to convince me to push you away. I sat there listening to Michael tell it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. All that suffering, all that pain, all that feeling of inadequacy and rejection, it had all been built on lies. It had all been the result of calculated psychological manipulation. I looked at Jennifer, who still had her head down, unable to look me in the eye. Did she confirm everything I asked weekly? Michael nodded. This morning when she woke up with a terrible hangover, I confronted her. I showed her the video. She despaired, begged for forgiveness, and then confessed everything in detail. With complete clarity, she explained every lie, every manipulation. Even the breaking of those plates last Christmas. You know, those plates, she said, were her grandmother's heirlooms, a lie. She had bought those cheap plates specifically to have an excuse to confront you, to create more distance. The level of planning, of premeditation, was shocking. Jennifer had systematically engineered my estrangement from the family, creating situations, distorting conversations, planting seeds of doubt in Michael's mind about me. And most painfully, Michael had believed it. He had taken her side without question, without investigating, without giving me the benefit of the doubt. I looked at my son and asked, why didn't you ever ask me directly about these things? Why didn't you ever give me a chance to defend myself? Michael burst into tears. Because I'm an idiot, Mom. Because I wanted to be the perfect husband, always putting my wife first. Because I thought you were being intrusive, that you needed boundaries. Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for failing you so much. I'm the worst son in the world. I looked at Jennifer, who finally looked up at me. Her face was completely racked with guilt and shame. Margaret, she began, her voice trembling, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your compassion. What I did was unforgivable. I spent months systematically destroying you, making you believe you were inadequate, that you were getting in the way, that you weren't good enough. I took you away from your grandson, excluded you from your family, humiliated you in the cruelest ways. Why? Because I'm sick. Because I have serious emotional issues that I've never addressed. Because instead of seeking therapy to deal with my childhood traumas and my feelings of envy, I projected all of that onto you. You who only wanted to help, who only wanted to love your family, who only wanted to be a present grandmother. Jennifer rose from her chair and, to my surprise, knelt in front of me. Her hands trembled as she held mine. I owe you everything, Margaret, everything. My beautiful wedding, you paid for it. The house renovations, you financed it. Ethan's complete trousseau, you provided it. And how did I repay all of this? By treating you worse than trash, humiliating you, pushing you away, intentionally making you suffer. I'm a monster. She burst into tears there, her head resting on my knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat there processing everything. Part of me wanted to scream, to curse, to kick that woman out of my life forever. But another part, the part that always prevailed, felt compassion. Because looking at Jennifer in that state, I saw not a monster, but a deeply wounded and sick woman. A woman who desperately needed professional help. I placed my hand on her head, making her look at me. Jennifer, I said calmly, you hurt me in a way that will take a long time to heal. Maybe it will never heal completely. But looking at you now, I see a person who is hurting, who is sick, who needs treatment. And despite everything, I still want to be part of this family. I still want to be Ethan's grandmother. I still want to have a relationship with you. But for that, you need to seek help. You need therapy, work through these traumas, address these emotional issues. Can you promise me that? Jennifer held my hands tightly. I promise, she said, through sobs. I promise I'll get help. I'll go to intensive therapy. I'll work through each of these issues. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for what I did to you. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'll fight to earn it. Michael came over and hugged us both. The three of us stood there holding each other, crying, beginning that long and difficult process of healing. In the months that followed, the road wasn't easy. Jennifer began individual therapy 3 times a week. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder combined with severe anxiety disorders. She began medication and intensive therapy. They also began couples therapy. I too began therapy to process all the trauma I had experienced. I discovered I had developed generalized anxiety disorder and depressive episodes. I needed to take care of myself too. Gradually, very gradually, things began to improve. Jennifer became genuinely affectionate, not the fake, manipulative affection of the beginning, but something real, something that came from an honest place. We talked at length in sessions facilitated by her therapist about everything that had happened. She apologized in detail for each specific situation, for each humiliation, for each manipulation. We established clear boundaries and open channels of communication. Jennifer learned to express her feelings in a healthy way, to speak up when she felt threatened or insecure, instead of acting destructively. Michael did his part too. He acknowledged that he had failed to protect me to be the son I deserved. He apologized countless times, always with concrete actions to back up his words. He became more present, more attentive, more protective. He set boundaries with Jennifer when necessary. Our relationship strengthened in a way that perhaps wouldn't have been possible without that whole ordeal. As for the money, Michael insisted on returning every penny. The $15,000 for the renovations, the $8,000 for Ethan's trousseau, part of what I spent on the wedding. I initially refused, but he insisted, saying it was a matter of dignity and fairness. I accepted and used the money wisely, renovating my own house, which was in need of repair. Today, 2 years after that terrible Christmas, I can say we have a functioning family. It's not perfect, no family is. But it's honest, based on real communication and mutual respect. Jennifer continues in therapy and is making steady progress. We've developed a genuine relationship where she can be vulnerable with me and share her fears without feeling judged. I'm a present grandmother in Ethan's life, who is now almost 3 years old and a cheerful and intelligent child. I visit them regularly, but with healthy boundaries that everyone respects. Michael is an attentive son, always making sure I feel included and valued. That Christmas Eve, when I cried alone hugging Robert's pillow thinking I'd lost everything, was the darkest night of my life. But what happened the next day proved that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom for the truth to come out. If Jennifer hadn't had that breakdown, if Michael hadn't discovered the manipulations, I probably would have spent the rest of my life believing I was inadequate, that I deserved to be rejected. The truth freed me. It freed us all. If you've made it this far and identified with any part of my story, know that you're not alone. Family relationships are complex, sometimes painful, and often confusing. But they can also be healed with honesty, willingness, and love. If you're going through something similar, don't give up. Seek professional help, set healthy boundaries, and communicate openly. But most importantly, always remember you have intrinsic value. You deserve respect, and you deserve to be loved in a healthy and genuine way. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. If this story touched your heart or made you reflect on your own family relationships, leave a like to help me reach more people. Share your experience in the comments. Have you ever experienced family manipulation? How did you deal with it? Let's create a community of support and mutual understanding together. And subscribe to the channel for more real stories of overcoming pain, but also hope and new beginnings. Your subscription helps me continue sharing these important stories. A warm hug, and until the next story.